The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Seven Signals webinar. We're going to get going here in about 5 minutes. Thanks for logging in early. My name's Don Cook. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer over at Seven Signal. With me today, I've got Chris Minton. And Chris is new to the organization, so this is his first webinar with us. But I can assure you, you're in good hands. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, so like I said, we're going to get going 4 or 5 minutes here, let everyone log in. If you don't mind letting us know where you're dialing in from today, we love that. I am here in Cleveland, as I usually am, dialing in for these things. And Chris is in Corpus Christi, Texas, which I have not been to before.
That's right. Great state of Texas.
What's the tourist attraction in Corpus Christi?
Tourist attraction in Corpus Christi must be the beach. Yeah, it's not the prettiest beach, but it's wet.
Okay. Now, do you get evacuated when the hurricanes come through? Have you been part of that process?
You know, I'm new here, and so I'm really trying to understand when you're supposed to go and when you're not supposed to, and I haven't gotten a really good answer, which is a bad thing. So, you know, I think it's going to be one of those learning on the job type events. So I'm originally from West Texas, where we had tornadoes. So I'm a little bit used to, you know, those type of events. But no, I haven't been evacuated yet. But they say the big decision is whether or not you stay or where you go. And that can mean all the difference. And,
yeah,
you know, so yeah.
Right on. Well, having lived in South Florida for about 20 years, I know what the hurricane evacuation process is like. And the good news about them is you can see them coming, not like a tornado that come, without warning sometimes in the middle of the night. So I guess there's that. So I see some Q&A coming through. We've got South Carolina, California, Georgia, Philadelphia. Thanks for sending those in, folks. Please keep them coming. Love to give your town a shout out. We've got Mexico and India. I know it's late overseas, so thanks for joining us today. We've been trying to keep these webinars at 11, 12 o'clock local time here on the East Coast, but sometimes they go to a little bit longer. We had a board meeting today, so this pushed today's webinar back. So sorry about the time changes, folks. We try our best to keep them at a certain time so you can rely on those every week and that repeated content. So we've got about 2 minutes left and we'll get going. Chris, how long have you been with us now? You still mark it in days, or are we at least in months?
We are almost 2 months.
Oh, right on. Okay. That's good. So I can't believe I gave you 2 months to prepare for a webinar.
Taking it easy on me.
Yeah. Taking it easy on the new guy. All right, I've got about 1:59, so we'll get started here shortly. Again, folks, thanks for dialing in early. We appreciate you guys getting settled in. If you don't mind shooting us a message using the questions pane, letting us know where you're dialing in from, we'd really appreciate it. I got a good group here today. Looking forward to Oxford, Ohio. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. So, we've had about, 12 or so responses so far. I'd love to get those numbers up. I see some familiar faces. We got an Aberdeen. So is that how close is that to you, Chris, from Corpus Christi?
Aberdeen, Scotland?
Aberdeen, Texas. Oh, Abilene. Excuse me. Abilene, not Aberdeen.
Oh, Abilene.
Abilene.
Oh, yeah. Abilene. Yeah, I was like, man, that's a really tough test right there. Abilene is a good hike. In Texas, you don't really go anywhere. You have to go. So that's about a 5-hour drive.
Oh, right on. Okay. All right, I've got 2 o'clock on the nose here, local time, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Again, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. That'll sound just about right. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Don Cook. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Seven Signal. We are the leader in wireless network monitoring, and today you're in for a treat. We've got another new topic coming your way, budgeting for wireless LAN improvements, and with me today is one of our newest team members, Chris Minton. He's a solutions engineer here with Seven Signal. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Don. Hello, and thank you everybody for joining. I am Chris Minton, one of the solutions engineers with Seven Signal, and I've been in the business for about 21 years now. I've worked for companies like Fortinet, Airtight Networks, SonicWall, Dell, Accenture, and even the great state of Texas. And during those 21 years, I've really spent my career focusing on building out computer IT networks. So I'm really excited to share with you guys what I've learned about budgeting for wireless networks and some of the best practices that I've had. So I'm looking forward to being here today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right, right on. Well, I've obviously seen the slides. I'm looking forward to today's presentations. But before we get into yours, I've just got 2 or 3 of mine that I want to walk the audience through. Some of you are new to us, so I want to make sure that everyone understands who Seven Signal is and what we do. The company's been around since 2007. We had a major milestone last quarter in that we're now monitoring over 1 billion data points daily. With over 200 customers and times a zillion for their devices, we are monitoring a ton of data and a lot of Wi-Fi networks. We're really proud to be able to do that for our customers and make sure that they have good, steady, stable Wi-Fi. So we're monitoring over 4 million devices daily. We're certified in over 40 countries with our sensor. Of course, Sapphire Eye is GDPR compliant, as is Mobile Eye. We've got 12 patents. So what you're going to see from Seven Signal, you aren't going to see from anyone else. We love to brag about those patents. We had 2 new issued just this year. So really great from a technology stack standpoint, in addition to what we bring to the wireless LAN world. So to put it simply, our customers come to us because we help them find and fix Wi-Fi issues. And since 2007, we've built a complete outside-in enterprise framework that's completely EP and device agnostic. And our products can be purchased modular depending on the discovery process that we go through, and we match products up with your unique environments. And Chris will tell you, if you've seen one wireless LAN, you've seen one wireless LAN. They're all very unique and have different challenges posed to them, lots of different devices. All of our products are replete with reporting, analytics, and alerting tools, so you don't have to be staring at a monitor. You can be proactive. And what we're doing is we're researching for the top 7 Wi-Fi problems. All of the problems that relate to Wi-Fi issues boil down to one of these issues. And our product, better than anyone's, is able to dig down and look at congestion and coverage issues, interference, network services, roaming issues, adapters and drivers, wireless LAN configuration. Because what we're doing with our products is we're running active and passive tests in the background silently 24/7, looking for things like throughput and packet loss, latency and jitter, MOS scores, again, bad adapters and drivers, and so on, using our sensors to provide a full spectrum analysis so you can actually see what's going on in the air. So what we do is we've got 2 modules. On the left, you see Mobile Eye. That's our 100% software as a service product. That installs on the client, on the device itself, Windows, Mac, Android. And on the right, you see Sapphire Eye. That's our perfect client sensor that installs in the rafters with the access points. That is a hardware-software subscription that performs that spectrum analysis. So some differentiation. There is quite a few, but just to show it on the screen visually, Mobile Eye would be the product that you use for your adapter and driver combinations, your roaming issues, and Sapphire Eye would be the one that's looking at your network services, your co-channel interference, radio frequency, that kind of stuff. And we're the only solution on the market that offers this complete suite. And you need to look at us as an enterprise solution. Our customers don't come to us for spot fixes. They've got one issue in one room. We actually become part of the network. So our engineers are using us constantly, so to avoid travel to other sites and whatnot. And we'll talk a little bit about that again in a few minutes. But I don't want to bore you too much about Seven Signal, because we can get into that at another time. So I'm going to hand the controls over to Chris, and we can talk about budgeting for wireless LAN improvements.
Great. Thank you, Don. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. So I want to convey to you guys, there's one thing today that you guys take with you is one of my main topics about budgeting for WLAN. I would like to, for everybody that can, that's available to, and hopefully no one's driving, if anybody can hop up on Google and just actually type in the words budgeting for wireless LAN improvements. And I say this to my point as an engineer talking to other engineers, 21 years and still going. I have built all sorts of networks, as most people have. And when you get to this stage in your career, mostly data centers, offices, spot locations, you name it. And wireless has always been near and dear to my heart because it's closest to your customer, which is the end user. Which is closest to the other customer, which, as we know in IT, we all have two customers. We have our peers, our employees that we work with every day, and we actually have the real customer that actually goes and buys that service or that product. And the wireless, as you guys know, with the old distributed model of access, core, right? Wireless is the access layer. And when you get something on your desk that says, we've got a new WLAN project, if you're probably still looking at Google, the first thing that every engineer does is start look at capacity planning. And this is the one thing that I would like for you guys to come away with, is the only thing I could say in 21 years of doing this is to stop. Is to stop thinking like an engineer and stop thinking about capacity planning right out of the jump. I know it is so hard. Every time I got a wireless project or was part of one or any type of project, I'm busting out the new latest Visio. I'm looking to see if I've got the latest Juniper icons or the Cisco icons in my Visio. I'm looking to see who's got my Fluke analyzer. I am ready. I'm capacity planning. If you look at Google and just pan down, as you guys know how Google works with AdSense and AdWords, someone has typed in to be in the front for people actually looking to do how to do a wireless LAN budget. And what you're seeing is that it's all about starting off the bat with capacity planning. Just for a second, don't think that way. When you first get a wireless LAN project handed to you, I'm going to show you what I've learned mostly through a lot of my mistakes and working with people far smarter, far more accomplished than I am, and learn from these guys. And hopefully that you guys will get some of this information and use it in your budgeting. So when you get this project and it's put to your desk and you stop thinking like the engineer, the first question I want you guys to ask when you're looking at this is actually ask the reason why. Just like my kids do when I ask everything. Why? Why is this wireless LAN project happening from a business sense? Then I want you to ask all the customers, that's the end users. I want you to look at this wireless project and say, I've got this wireless project, we've got this wireless project. What does this mean to you? What does successful look like? I'll give you a couple examples of my failures with this, not taking this step. I built many years ago the most secure, robust wireless solution that I ever thought was possible back in my day with a team. And it's not what anybody wanted, and they didn't use it at all. It was actually for a third-party HR team to lease out a building because they were going to do a hiring event for colleges, and all they needed was access to the internet and to a printer. And I spent all of my time with my team thinking about security, thinking about roaming. And when I came up and I showed the actual document, the statement of work of what it's going to look like, it was completely not what was spec'd, right? Knowing your customer kind of thing. Same thing happened with the call center. Built a completely non-roaming, non-compliant, not very good quality because I was thinking again that it was going to be stationary, that it was going to be just internet use, and it was actually a very much voice over IP wireless network connectivity. And when I started to ask those questions before of what the business purpose was, I started to get a lot of my information of gathering success criteria for what vendor I was going to select, what antennas, what type of medium, and yes, even all of the good stuff that we like to do, all the testing. And once I started asking these questions and started talking to the people, the actual end users, of what they needed to use it for, that helped me build into my budget of what it was going to be. And first, while we got your thinking, I'm just curious, and we'll answer this at the end. In your IT departments, or in everybody's IT departments, what is the second biggest expense annually? Do you think hardware costs more than employees, or employees cost more than software? If you think the second highest annual expense is IT employee salaries, type A. If you think it's software subscription, B. Type C if you think it's hardware. And at the end, I'll let you guys know the answer. And then I'm going to move on from that, and I'm going to talk about the budgeting here. So once you have determined the business need for this WLAN project, once you have talked to the end users, it's time to talk about cost design. Now, most cost elements of a WLAN project, in my experience, are really determined by the type. I have listed 3 of the ones that I think are the majority. Most wireless LAN refreshes that we deal with on the day-to-day, or 2 years or 3 years, is the most common, which is this the incumbent wireless LAN. It's something that you guys have been working on for years. You're happy with it, and it's time to refresh. It's been maybe 2 years. It's time to put new APs in, maybe new technology, but you're familiar with the location. You're familiar with what's needed. You still need to follow the same aspects of testing, but think about this when you're asking that question, why are we doing this WLAN? Once you think about why, and someone tells you, well, we're just doing a refresh, that helps you with your budget planning. That I can hear you already thinking about what you guys need to do, about testing criteria, about rip and replace over the weekends, all that kind of stuff, because you have already answered the question why, and you've answered what's it going to be. If you have expansion or rip and replace towards the bottom, that's usually, in my experience, and probably everybody else, that's one of the most difficult, because that usually means that the wireless LAN that you were using, which was the incumbent, is no longer going to be used, and you need to rip everything out and replace with somebody new. That understanding of what type of wireless LAN project is and what success looks like, that helps you identify the steps in budgeting. Because once you get to that point, which is really funny in my experience, and I'm sure y'all's as well, is that as soon as somebody comes and says, we need to update, or we've got this new WLAN project, you ask what it is, what's it for, and they say what it is, what it's for. The first thing they'll ask you is, how much does it cost? And then then they say, you need to justify it. Right before you start designing it or installing it. I found the best practice for this is when you start as a non-engineer, when somebody hands you a WLAN process and you ask the question, what's the business need? What type of wireless LAN are we talking about? And then you already have the on and you have the I of ROI. You have the investment, or a good idea of it, and the on is what it takes to get there. So you're already halfway there on the justification, because you have information on what the investment, or a good idea of what the investment already is going to be. And you have a good idea, because nobody knows your infrastructure, nobody knows your business better than you, of what that's going to take to get there. So you'll see the bottom 2, you already know those 2. The next 2 main topics is the time frame and money. Knowing the time frame for when this wireless LAN network, when it needs to be done, how much time you have, and knowing the type, you can already start to break this down and giving a realization of what you can use with your time and your resources to get this wireless LAN accomplished and feel good about it. I always liked to ask how much money I have, and not for somebody to come and say, tell me how much this is going to cost. I feel, again, it's just a personal thing, especially if I know what type it is and what they're really after and how much money I have. I feel like I can hit those SLAs a lot better than me trying to say, money, right? So these factors in the justification help go into the actual budgeting process. By the time you're at the justification process, at the beginning, you had already started thinking about a proof of concept document. There's a lot of talk about statement of work. Statement of work is like, I'm going to build you and I'm going to hand you a wireless network. How it actually performs is really subjective, right? So the value between vendor and customer statement of work is very, very important and needs to be communicated. But proof of concept, in my opinion, for wireless engineers and for your customers, that proof of concept from the beginning is absolutely critical. If you build a network like I have done earlier that didn't fit the criteria, it's a failure, even though the statement of work is still the same. You did build a wireless network, but they can't use it because it wasn't inducive to what they need it for. Example, WLANs in hospitals. If you don't design a really nice roaming capable network and you have not actually tested it with the software that's actually using on that, you know, that could be considered, you know, an uh-oh, right? I have found that of all of the cheat sheets, all of the calculators, all of the capacity planning, of actually going and sitting down with an end user and saying, what does this business need to look like from day to day? Will you tell me that? I'm going to document this. I'm actually, after I get out of proof of concept, I'm going to pilot this. And at the end of the day, you're going to report and you're going to sign off on, yes, I can move quickly down the halls and I don't lose connectivity and my application works as expected. I'm also going to have that same information against my vendor when I'm doing compatibility testing. And usually if I've selected 2 vendors in the process during my design phase, I'm going to say, this is the criteria, not, yes, the wireless LAN is up and connected and I've got great signal strength and I've got a great type of, you know, speeds. No, how well does it perform for the end user? I use that same concept for my own staff in IT and say, this new wireless network, what's most important for you? They'll say monitoring, quick availability, any of those big those big points. I will write that into my proof of concept. I will go to my IT management and I'll go to executive. And of course, they just say, I just don't want to get in trouble with it. I want it to have, you know, good value. I don't want it to cost a lot. You know, I just want it to work well, right? You have all of those agreements. You've just built your testing criteria already before you've even started looking at capacity planning. And when you have that proof of concept well-defined and everybody's agreed on, everything else really falls into place, in my opinion, because you already know the money that you're going to get in, you know the type of WLAN you're going to get. And at the end of the design phase, I like to conclude the pilot, the proof of concept, the vendor selection. I like to include that into the actual design phase. When I'm into the install phase, I have already chosen my vendor. I usually will, depending on what type of organization it is, depending on certain regulations or how you do business, whoever's been awarded the contract, whoever I've tested with, whoever I've reached out to, you know, RFPs, or I've just gone out myself and had picked 3 vendors or 5 vendors and then narrowed it down to 3. I haven't just put these guys in a lab. I haven't just looked at the cost. I haven't looked at their speeds and feeds. I've actually looked at them in the lab, see how well they hit on a certain criteria, again, in my proof of concept document. And then I've already gone with 2 or maybe 1 that I've selected, and I've actually put it in 10% of my end user in live traffic, and that's my pilot. So if I had 50 offices that I was going to refresh, I would put this in 5 offices. You know, 2 with 1 vendor, maybe 2 in the other, you know, and use that as my actual testing criteria. Referring to that document, making sure that everybody has said that, yes, this does take off. And then once that's done, the actual install phase is really what I found is quite easy, because again, you already know what the business case is for this WLAN. Knowing that, you know the timeline of how long this wireless network is supposed to be up, or what is its purpose. You've talked to the end users of what they need. You've talked to IT, you've talked to your peers, your IT management, your executives, and you have reported this information back to your vendor of exactly what these things need to be done, and you have in a time frame. And now you know how much money you're working with. And at this point, you'll find, and in my experience, a lot of the end users, aka your people that your customers, and will be very positive during these tests, during this pilot. And when it's the time to cut everybody over or the time to do an expansion, there's that confidence that you have that you've already done this with 10%. You know the business needs, you know the timeline, and you can roll in to that successful WLAN project. So again, my biggest statement in the 21 years that I've been doing this is that when you get the project, even if it's something that you've known that's coming, if it's cyclical, it's something that your team does every 2 years, is a partial refresh of the wireless LAN environment, is to really ask the question, what's the business purpose of this WLAN? What does it need to solve? And then start that way instead of capacity planning. I have found more often than enough, when I start with capacity planning, I get overwhelmed and I get in a wormhole of trying to figure out how to design the network. And if I just would have asked the question, what are we doing this for? I would have gotten a lot of information that then I could have gone back and then used a capacity planner. And over my years, I have found a couple of hints on how to help this out, and I wanted to share this with you guys. So I know that a lot of webinars, you get free access points. I have found, and a mentor showed me this years ago, when you go and join these, and it's not your normal incumbent vendor, somebody new, it's a great way to learn about new technology and a new way of doing things. But every once in a while, you'll get a free AP, or you'll get access to it. A lot of people sometimes will just take this home, or they'll just put it in the IT closet and never really think about it. Because if you do think about it, you can't put it inside your network because, again, it's not been tested, it's not secured, it's got to go through all the paces. But what I found with those is that they can be very helpful and very insightful during some of these type of WLAN projects. So pop-up WLAN is something that happens all the time. I'll give an example. I had an AP just like this several years ago. We had a customer appreciation event where we were doing tailgating at the local stadium, which was right across from the office. I showed up with my family, just ready to have a good time, meet the people I worked with. CEO, CFO, every type of chief level person came up to me and said, "Hey, everybody that comes here, there's so many college kids and there's so many people coming here to these games. Nobody can get on, check on Facebook, all that kind of jazz. We need to set up Wi-Fi for these people." Now, right off the bat, this breaks just about every type of security protocol you can think of, and there was no way. And at that time, I was like, there's no way to do it. But then my boss at the time and I were thinking, like, you know what, we have these APs that we got free, we just have them. Let's just turn on a switch port to the DMZ and just offer a simple internet with a simple password so everybody that's employees can enjoy the Saturday outside and they can connect. Well, guess what? We're able to do that really quickly, didn't break any security violations or anything like that. And then it actually became part of the standard things that company and that organization actually does from year to year. So when they have an event, there's actually a process now for those Wi-Fi APs. Another good thing about being in IT is that you're usually involved in every aspect of a company's business, but sometimes you can get so buried into the tech and so what you're doing and just to your prism of view. I found that it's really beneficial to look outside your company and see what's going on with your company. Simple Google search alerts about what's happening with your company, and you'll find a lot of information. A lot of the questions that you've always asked sometimes get answered from articles about, why am I doing this new WLAN refresh? Well, turns out our company is possibly going to be acquiring somebody, or we're going to do an expansion. Sometimes you get that information even before your bosses are even told about it. So sometimes you have a good idea of what's coming. And then also, if you really want to keep your budget in line with the business, and you want to be able to do the best job for your end users and your customers, is to really take the time to pay attention to what your competitors are doing as well. If your competitors are doing a lot of, say, university interviews, a lot of things of that nature, you're going to want to do that too, and you're going to be able to offer a quick solution and technology for that. And you're also going to want to keep an eye on the landscape of what trends are happening in specifically in your vertical. If it's healthcare, if it's universities, it doesn't take a lot of time, but it does answer a lot of questions when it does come to you as a Wi-Fi professional. When somebody says, hey, we need a refresh or we need this, you pretty much already have that information of what's happening, and you can start to build to suit. So again, that's all I really wanted to share with you guys. I hope that was insightful, but that was my best practices at 21 years. I hope maybe at 42 years, I can tell you if I've learned anything different.
Right on. Thanks, Chris. Well done. And I don't think, did we answer the question you initially posed? I got some responses in the chat room. I got a couple C's and a couple A's, no B's. I can't remember if we answered that question.
We did not. It's actually software subscriptions.
So that's the second biggest line item in an IT budget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you start thinking about all of the software renewals that you have to do for an IT department, including computer, apps, services, it really adds up. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. So I did get a question in here, and I'll use this opportunity just before I get into the next question here. Go ahead and use the question pane in your GoToWebinar console, and feel free to ask any questions related to this, and I'll start getting into them here. So a lot of our, this first question's around CapEx versus OpEx, and we run into this a lot, and I'll let you answer it, Chris. But we've often run up against companies coming to us and saying, "Hey, we need to get this put into our CapEx versus OpEx." And since we're a subscription service, how do they tackle that sort of challenge?
That's a really good question. And I found in my experience that after a certain amount of years, it actually can be construed as CapEx. That is dependent on a whole bunch of criteria. The main thing is that you want to make sure that with whoever your comptroller is or whoever the finance arm is, they are aware and abreast of the situation, because it really helps out when it comes to budgeting other projects, getting more revenue to do other type of things from the budget can open up if you follow how your company does modeling for CapEx and OpEx.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you did mention free access points earlier. I want to assure everyone they're not getting anything for free today from us. So I had to throw that out there. We don't have any free sensors for anyone, unfortunately. They don't give me a big enough marketing budget for that, Chris. We'll have to figure something out moving forward. One question in here about is free Wi-Fi secure and reliable? That may have been a topic that you touched on.
Right. So, everything. My favorite answer when somebody would ask me a question, especially in engineering space, is always like, it depends.
Right.
It really depends on the set criteria. Nothing's free. That old adding, if something's free, then you're the product. Reliable and secure. I think what I found best is to let and set expectations to my end users. If something is my customers, hey, this is free and open, and caveat and poor, right? This is something that you're not going to be able to access secure information on. Don't even think about it. No, you can't open this up inside the certain areas. This is free and open, or possibly reliable or unreliable, but it is what it is and should be treated as such. So I find that setting expectations to my end users about what those services offer compared to what they don't usually really kind of negates the question.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I did get a couple questions in here about whether or not we're recording this webinar and if we're going to share the slides and the recording. The answer to both is yes. We do have a YouTube channel where we do post all of the most recent webinars. You can certainly respond to any of my emails. Again, this is Don, and I will share both the recording and the webinar slides with you. Keep those questions coming in. We love them. Another question in here. When do you decide to hire professional services for WLAN design versus doing it in-house?
That is a great question, and fraught with peril.
Yeah.
Because you definitely want to have a very good estimate of the hours that professional services is going to use. Because that will go into that budget, and usually those hours are non-negotiable. So once a budget has said 100 hours for professional services, it will not allow for any more, or you have to go and do quite a bit of pulling and rearranging of things. I find you look at your workload for your team, and you prioritize that project. If this project is so important, or your team is working on something that is so mission critical that they cannot allocate their time to, that's when I start thinking of professional services.
That makes sense. So I'm going to use that as the last question. And there are a couple more that came in, and we'll answer those individually because we're at time, and I wasn't looking at my trusty phone here sitting next to my machine. So we'll leave that at the last question. Folks, thank you very much for attending. Chris, great job on your first webinar. We're lucky to have you here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Hope he has a great day.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.